صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
Inshallah, we are going to start with Surah Yasin, continue with Dua Tawassul, and our dear brother Rostami would inshallah recite Hadith Kisa. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما منذر آباءهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مغمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم وإن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون اتخذوا من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض ميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في فلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا ونطعم من لم يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتاز اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم عاد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فعنا يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لا مالكون وذللنا لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يعكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقنا من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو خلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أحسنت
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
دعاء توسل بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا غرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا وجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا أبو جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله.
يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا وجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا
يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله
طلب حاجات التماس الدعاء يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فغري وحاجتي إلى الله، وتوسلت بكم إلى الله، واستشفعت بكم إلى الله، فاشفعوا لي عند الله، واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله، فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله، وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله، فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله، صلى الله عليهم أجمعين، ولعن الله أعداء الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين، آمين يا رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Please recite the Fatiha for all your marhumin, also Shuhada of Lebanon and marhumin of IJA on memory board.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيء ذنوبنا أبو الزهراء المصطفى أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المبين وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم، وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد له وما لهم من دونه من وال. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. I would like to first and foremost thank the community at IJA, the management at IJA, for inviting me and allowing us all to congregate and commemorate this particular occasion, which is the occasion associated with Abu Abdullah Imam Hussain leaving his childhood birthplace, his family home, the city in which he grew up, the place in which his family members, specifically, first and foremost, by which name the city itself is named Madina al-Munawwara, the city of Rasulullah. And his leaving of this homely town city towards the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards Makkah al-Mukarramah. And we signify this date because it means a journey, in essence, that every year those who truly understand the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commemorate, remember, learn from, transform themselves, their communities, in order to elevate themselves and revolutionize their nafs, their themselves, their souls, so that they can become in accord with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly wants us to live for in this meager life. Alongside this, today's particular Majlis is being held for the Isal al-Swab of Marhum Shabbar Mahdi, son of Akhdar Wasi Ali. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the Marhum's resting place in Barzakh one of the gardens of paradise. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through this Majalis, which is also being held for them, for it to be a means by which their amal of khair is increased, their darajat and amal khair are also increased. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them to be on the day of resurrection joined with Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And we also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to confer his sabr upon his family members that are left behind. Please join me in reciting a Surah Al-Fatiha for Marhum Shabbar Mahdi, son of Akhtar Wasi Ali. Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. One of the most important factors when we are thinking of a legacy of somebody who's departed from this world, one of the greatest things that is used to signify the type of legacy that is left behind of an individual is based on what they leave behind. And one of the greatest things that's counted in what's left behind is how many people they left which they were able to teach, to raise, to provide as members of society that contribute to that society. Their standard and status within providing for that community and society. And when we reflect on this trait, we find, for example, the marhum Shabr Mahdi, that we are also praying for in today's Majlis, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this Majlis as ajr khair for him. We see also that he has raised, trained and taught 2 children, contributed to society. I'm informed by his wife, or through his wife, Sister Uzma Zaidi, that Marhum was a very honest person. He had a high level of taqwa, God consciousness. He was somebody that never wronged anyone. He was somebody who was very particular and high on tahara and remaining clean, both physically and spiritually. And that he instilled these qualities within his 2 sons, Shamil Mahdi and Murtajiz Mahdi, who are well-mannered and have inherited from their father these very traits we talk about. Now, these are indeed very great qualities. If you think about that, especially in this day and age, when you have a spouse speaking about a spouse that has left this world in such great words. You know, the majority of us, our akhirah is dependent on the people who are regarded as our Ahlul Bayt, the people of our household. I may have said this before previously, that many of us are going to end up in heaven or in hell, not based on our amal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most of us are going to be successful based on our interactions with the people that we live with. How fortunate, I would say, for the marhum that his spouse is speaking of him in this day and age, when you have constant conflicts between husbands and wives. I get to hear a lot of that in the role that I perform. Unfortunately, it seems to be more and more as society becomes less tolerant. Divorce rates, as you know, are constantly increasing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from those type of evil actions. Remember, the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one that shakes upon talaq. When you hear of qualities as such, we are surprised. But at the same time, we're not surprised. When we hear these qualities for those who are attached to Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Please recite aloud salawat. Because these type of sifat, these type of qualities, they are not so far-fetched to believe about mu'mineen. When you talk about being somebody who has a high level of taqwa, when you talk about he hasn't harmed anybody, we find that sometimes amazing. Why is that amazing? If we are followers of the most perfected creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are followers of them and their personalities, then it shouldn't be something that's bewildering or astounding. If you look at history, and even today, if you class people based on the legacy, because we're talking about legacy, right? Of what we will leave behind, what others have left behind. We're talking about the marhum and what he has left behind. If you look at history until today, the greatest legacy that's been left by anybody is the impact that that person has had on mankind. The greater the number, and I'm talking about it in a positive sense, because there's been people in history and even till today that have impacted humanity in a very negative manner. But those that have contributed and affected mankind in the greatest number, you could arguably say this is the person with the greatest level of legacy left behind. Now, if we look at the legacy of what surmounts as 2 billion people today, that is 25% of the world's population that is Muslim, who profess to the legacy left by Rasulullah. That means 1/4 of this world's population right now profess to the message that was brought by the Holy Prophet of Islam. That means that 1 in every 4 people on this world, in this world right now, is somebody, 1 in 4. For every 4 people, 1 person is a follower or somebody who professes to the legacy left by Rasulullah. Now, if it's not the biggest community in the world, it is at least one of the biggest. So as far as legacy goes, and what has been left, who has been affected, and if we're talking in terms of numbers, then no doubt there is none that can be compared with Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the biggest community in the world, size-wise, is the Muslim community. Some may say Christians are far greater in number, but that for us doesn't mean that they are separate. They are also awaiting the awaited Prophet as we are. Yes, there's a difference in their thought process about who Nabi Isa actually is, but with regards to a faith community, and if we put those two together, it becomes even larger. If we put all of the communities of Ahl Kitab together, it becomes the largest. The message of Rasulullah, the message of Islam, the message of the Masumeen, the message of every single prophet has always been about community. It's always been about unity. We are followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen unites the entire population into 2 phrases and unifies all of them as one. Either your believing brother or your equal in humanity. That's everybody under one community. And the reason why Islam is so emphasizing of this basis of establishing a community, maintaining this community, it is that through this we find success not only as individuals, but for our families and for society at large. Now, let's just take that down as an example. We've got a new president that's being sworn in. Somebody may think that he doesn't need anybody, but even the president needs a physician, a doctor, when they become ill. True or not true? course. We saw that during COVID, right? He was affected. Was he not in need? Of course he was. And doctors, they themselves, are they not in need? Let's just say that the garbage people that come to collect garbage don't come. Is the doctor's life going to be affected? Horrendously so. The doctor himself is dependent on the person who comes to collect the garbage. In fact, every human being, whichever role they play, they are interdependent. One cannot do without the other. We are designed as such to be of those who live in a society where one another is dependent and aids the other. That's just the nature of how we live. Nobody can say, oh, I'm not in need of anybody else, no matter what your station and status may be. Now, society, especially in the United States, not just here, but especially here, this sense of community is being eroded, especially after COVID. The individual, me, myself, and I, has been emphasized and taken to a degree where it seems to be about individualism more than ever before in history. People used to survive as tribes, as clans, because they knew individually we cannot survive. This is what the animal kingdom teaches us as well. But more and more, it seems to be an emphasis that it's just you by yourself, you look after yourself, and that's all that matters. This erosion of community is being attacked. This sense of belonging, and remember this, psychologically, within our very nature and fitrah, there is a requirement to belong to a community. It's in our very nature. Imagine you're just looking at a group of people. Everybody's extremely well dressed. In this world, in this country, you see a group of people, they're all really appropriately dressed, well-to-do, and they're enjoying themselves in a halal manner. Wouldn't you want to participate and belong to that community? Of course, you would say, oh, this is such a... And even if you don't belong to them, you would say, how beautiful is this group of people that I see all so well organized, so well dressed, and they're all unified. One of the greatest things that people were astounded by with regards to Malcolm X was what? How he unified 1 million people to march together, dressed all exactly the same, unified collectively for a particular aim. Everybody wanted to be part of that. Even if you weren't part of the black nation of Islam. Why? Because it looked appealing. And there's this internal feature that we all have as human beings to be grouped and come together collectively. It makes us happy. Internally, our ruh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. He knows us better than ourselves. Shaitan, remember, always wants to be who? By himself. He's the one that eats by himself, sleeps by himself, lives by himself. Everything he does is lonely. Truly lonely. Whenever we find ourselves wanting to disassociate from a community, understand as a mu'min, this is the waswasa, this is the whispering of shaitan. I'm tired. I haven't got time. I'm busy. This is him not wanting you to congregate together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made all his great acts of worship collective. We came today, we did salah. Collectively, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even allows for us to delay prayer when? When there is a collective that's going to perform it. Now, the real aspect is, even when we pray individually, what we say is in the plural form. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Indeed, only you is it that we worship, and only from you do we seek help. اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Guide us upon the straight path. It's just me praying by myself. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for you to think of yourself as a community constantly. Not as an individual, as society may want you to become. Not this selfish nature, but the one that is collective. Within this is khair, within this is barakah, within this is bounties and blessings for you. One example, when you pray by yourself, you pray Maghrib, you get your 3 units. Pray it collectively. What do those 3 units become? Multiply each by 70. Allahu Akbar. 3 multiplied by 70. Any mathematicians here? 210. 3 by yourself, 210 collectively. Who doesn't want that? How long will it take to make 210 rakats of prayer? But if you come together, multiplied. That's the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine everything else that you must do. Also multiplied. This beautiful religion of Islam has come to establish unity. Unity. Collective unity. Before the Holy Prophet's time, there were 2 tribes constantly fighting in Medina. And these 2 tribes, Aus and Khazraj, were what? Tribal. Why couldn't they get along? Bloodlines. They forgot that they were all from one father and one mother. Hazrat Adam and our mother, Hawa. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon them both. The Holy Prophet came. For decades they were killing one another. The Holy Prophet came and did what? He brought them into the fold of Islam and did what? Made brotherhood between them. Problem solved. Islam came to do what? To make brotherhood and sisterhood amongst our entire community. How fortunate we are that what bonds us is not our language, it's not our food, because many I think would say, if I didn't have to eat this food, I'll be better off. Not because it's bad, just not to my taste. But because of what? Our culture, not our culture. Because of our caste, not because of our caste. Because of our color, not because of our color. We are a community which is based on the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Peace be upon Allah. Islam is based on not tribal mentality, not cultural mentality, not race. Islam is based on brotherhood. As we hear, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِخْوَةٌ. All believers are brothers and sisters. Islam unifies us as such. And what a blessing. The Holy Prophet was even told and instructed to take counsel from your brothers. The Holy Prophet needs counsel? Never. But he did not involve them as making sure that they were involved in the community. When it came to the battle of Khandaq, the Holy Prophet takes counsel, says, we have this battle that is imminent. What do you say? How do we defend ourselves? And Salman al-Muhammadi comes and gives a suggestion. Build and dig a trench, Ya Rasulullah. I've seen it done. It's a great defense mechanism. Guess what? The Holy Prophet accepts and implements. What happens? It is one of the reasons for the victory of that day. I say one because you all are aware who went out to defend Islam that day and whose one strike was heavier than all the ibadah of jinn and ins. I'm talking about none other than the line of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So, when we see these aspects within our community, when we realize that we are part of a community that promotes taking opinions, giving counsel to one another, mentoring one another, the elders mentoring the youngsters, bringing them up, allowing them to benefit from the experience of the elders. Isn't that what we see in the relationship between Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen? Perfect example of mentorship. That's what these communities are supposed to be. Not you sit there with your age group and we sit here with our age group. No. The elders, the seniors with their experience, providing for the youth, and the youth humbling themselves before that experience and saying, I'm grateful for you teaching me so that I don't have to go through those pitfalls and I can save myself time, money and energy to not make those mistakes. That's a community that's alive. That's a community that's doing well. Now when we look and we reflect nowadays, we see this sitting down together as a community, as a family being eroded, especially post-COVID. It's very rare that you find people in the wider community even concerned about family members. It's me, myself, my direct family, but nothing else. It's a very lonely state, my dear brothers and sisters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us from that. But coming to a community, just sitting amongst the mu'mineen, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers upon us as bounties and blessings is infinite. Next month, the month of Sha'ban is coming. And one of the things that we frequently get in Sha'ban is a lot of weddings. It's the month of weddings. I call it the month of weddings because there isn't a sad day within it. And so as mu'mineen, we tend to utilize that month to celebrate. But often, what happens in the month of Sha'ban is the groom or the bride, or if it's not the groom or the bride, it's the family that say, we want to amalgamate and invite all these men and women. We want to make sure that we have, this catered for. We have it in the most absolute elaborate setting, that there has to be music and dancing, because what fun is there without music and dancing? And somebody who's related may say, well, Nana, what can I do? He's my relative. I have to go. He's my uncle's son, my first cousin. my brother, she's my niece, etc., etc. But a mu'min will say what? So brother or sister, this action brings the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is supposed to be a day that you are supposed to be starting your life. Half of your iman is supposed to be completed. Why do you want to initiate that? Rather than having blessings, having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove His mercy from that place. Why do you want the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's haram. It's haram. Why is it haram? Because you are causing a fitna within the society. How? You're allowing free mixing. Yes, it may happen outside, but you're a believer. You're a mu'min. You have been blessed with awareness that others haven't. You're not here to follow society. And I know that there are a lot of pressures, especially for our youth. Those of our youth that are at college or at university, the amount of peer pressure that's on them to do what? To gather in groups. Remember, I told you, it's our nature. Not just as mu'mineen, every human being, Muslim, non-Muslim, he or she wants to be part of a group. And when you go into university or college, what is it all about? Alpha, Delta, Gamma, whatever it is. All of these fraternities, right? You have to be part of a group. And if you're not part of a group, then apparently there's something wrong with you. Even if that group is telling you to drink alcohol till you become incapacitated and end up in the ICU. And I've seen and I've heard stories where individuals have gone to that extent, so desperate to fit in. I know there's a big pressure, especially on our youth. Peer pressure to fit in. Because it's hard being on the outside. But remember, you're different. You're special. Why? Not because you're born into it. No. Because you understand what it means to be not a follower of a group of people who have no relationship with you. Don't care if you're well, unwell. You are followers of who? Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Please recite the answer. They want you to go to a nightclub. They want you to go drinking. They want you to be in places where there's parties going on, where you are face to face with na-mahram. Don't let it delude you. Just remember, your refusal in youth, I cannot surmount for you the ajr and thawab that is for you in this age. Your praying at this age in youth is worth 1 rak'ah of your prayer in youth is worth 1,000 in old age. Your protection of your nafs, your soul, your remaining pure in thought, in intention, in action, on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have a shade under His throne. There is a place. Remember, on that day, there's no shade for nobody. Everybody's going to be made accountable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment has placed for a youth who has preserved his or her youthfulness, where they have thought of Allah first and let all of these indecencies, these exploitations of your valuable youth and time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised, on that day I will give a shade where there is shade for no one, for a youth who has protected his or her chastity and morality and decency. Allahu Akbar. How great an opportunity. There are pressures at work, outside in society. We are told to be part of a nation. After being an individual, that's the emphasis first and foremost. If not, then yeah, you can be part of your family, but more important, be part of a group. Which group? Your nation, your tribe, your football team, whatever it is, make that the number one affiliation. Our affiliation is not to anything but first and foremost the submission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as His instructions to the greatest, most perfected, most moral, most decent, most knowledgeable, most sublime creations of all, none other than Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Please recite Allah salawat. We are told to be concerned with regards to our community. The Holy Prophet says, the one who is not conscious or worried about the affairs of believers, not from me. We're required to be aware of our community and the members of our community. That's why we're told to come together, to regularly meet and sit and interact and ask each other. You think every community has that blessing? Believe you me, my dear brothers and sisters, having gone round the world to many communities, many countries, we are fortunate. We have this house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can come and congregate, be members of a community. Which community? The godly community. It is beneficial for you whilst you're alive, for your family members, and more importantly, when you're gone. How many people are in their graves today that nobody remembers? You are part of a group and a community, and your contributions will never be forgotten. I promise you. Not my promise, the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who does a deed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why do we come here? We have come here for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our intentions are clear. My dear brothers and sisters, when we see the benefits, what comes from being part of this collective, good, when we are part of it and we are doing and are concerned with it. I started today's Majlis with a verse from the Holy Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ra'd, the thunder, chapter number 13, verse number 11. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. وَإِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ سُوءًا فَلَا مَرَدَّ لَهُ وَمَا لَهُم مِّن دُونِهِ مِنْ وَالٍ. Please pay careful attention to these words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my dear brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, surely Allah does not change the condition of a people, of a community, until they change that which is within their own selves, their own nafus, their own nafs. And when Allah intends evil to a people, there is no averting it. And they have no protector besides Allah. Wow, subhanallah. A community, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, is based upon what? A group of people. And that group of people themselves are dependent upon each nafs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change our community and its state if we are poor, uneducated, if we have issues internally and externally, if we are not prosperous, not just financially, academically, educationally, importantly, spiritually, from our akhlaq, from our behavior. That will not change, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, up until each and every individual that makes up that community changes themselves. We each have a responsibility to make this come unity. What does community mean? It means that you have something in common. Remember the young guys and girls at university? What do you have in common with those fraternities? With those people that are your classmates, apart from that you're studying some worldly matter together? Nothing. What you have in common that gives you that unity, making community, is your morals, your principles, your ethics, your values. We do not compromise those for the sake of belonging to a community that doesn't care about our dunya, never mind our akhirah. We come together. We have a common understanding based on what we think? No. Based on what the Almighty, all-wise, all-knowledgeable Creator has made for us to value how to live, sit, eat, breathe. And even when we have no life in our own limbs, for what the community does for us. You know, even families, some people may say, oh, my family is sufficient. I've got plenty of people. That's what the Asr Jahiliyyah was about. I have, this number of people in my family, they'll take care of it. Do you know what the ahkam, the akhlaq of when you die for your family members is? To step back, not to be hands-on with your burial. That's the akhlaq. Why? It's too painful. Those of you who ever buried one of your own, washing and shrouding that body is not an easy task. Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His mercy, wants you to be absolved from that. He wants the youth in the community to take on that role. But if the youth of the community themselves are not aware of the ahkam and the rules and the regulations of how to fulfill the final rites, and a community hasn't given ownership to the youth to say, this is your responsibility. This is not our task. Our backs are painful. We can't lift bodies and turn them around and move them around. This is where you need to step up. That only happens when we realize being part of a community that is with me, not just while I'm alive. And remember, many a relationship dies when you die. In fact, some of them die before you die. When you get to retirement, your job's already saying, thank you very much. Your battery cell is finished. We're going to replace you tomorrow. Here's something to survive by, not live by. It's called a pension. Right? Family members, your community. That's why if somebody dies, it becomes wajibi kifai. If somebody has to step up. Somebody has to, from the community, step up and perform those rites. Otherwise, the entire community has committed a sin. Community. As long as one steps forward and fulfills those duties, and those of you who've ever fulfilled those duties of the final rites, and remember, we're all going to die. There is no if and buts about that. Please, let's not be in any delusion. If the best of God's creation came and left, who are we? We're no exception. But what it is and how we live in this time period, small period, with the love and the akhlaq, taught to us by who? The best of creation, which had the best of akhlaq. Ibn Muljim strikes Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, by which they pass from this world. Look at the akhlaq. Never mind towards those that do good towards you. Look at the generosity of the one that we follow to the one who's been the means by which he's taken away. Untie his hands. Has he water? Give him the milk. If I die by his stroke, one strike, no more. And if I live, I'm inclined to forgiving him. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. What akhlaq. Never mind during life when you're departing from this world. That's why we follow and call ourselves the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's why we love to follow the Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because of what they've shown us. My dear brothers and sisters, there's a lot to be said. Let me just suffice by saying this. We have a lot of rights among each other. A lot of benefits, not just in worship, in every aspect of our life. There is so much, even, and this is the last point, when it comes to our relationship with the Imam of our time. Remember, this relationship is the basis upon whether we are classed as being jahil and died the death of ignorance, as the Holy Prophet has said and stated. The one who dies not knowing the Imam of his time has died the death of ignorance. What does that mean? Knowing the Imam. Can we know the Imam? Really? No. What we can know is my relationship to him. Can we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And these are not my words. These are not my words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is stating. Rasulullah is stating. Amir al-Mu'mineen has stated. Nobody knows Allah except you and I, Ya Ali. Nobody knows me except you and Allah. Nobody knows you except I and Allah. What does that teach us? We can gain a sense of ma'rifah, awareness. And that awareness is what makes our iman. And that's what the Holy Prophet uses. Lam ya'rif, from awareness, becoming aware of the Imam of his time. What does that mean? Even that awareness is based on not as individually, based on a collective. Let me give you the words of Ayatollah Ruhullah, Imam Khomeini, Rahmatullah alayh. Listen to the words of what Imam Khomeini says with regards to our relationship, our waiting, which is what we're doing for the Imam of our time, and our collective unity as a community. Ayatollah Khomeini states, in this period of ghaibah, we are tasked with a duty, waiting for the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Let's have a loud Imam Khomeini says, this does not mean that we sit in our homes and take to our prayer beads in our hands and say, Al-Ajal, Al-Ajal, hasten the appearance, Ya Allah, of the Imam of my time. No. Imam Khomeini says, the hastening of his arrival can only be achieved through your actions. You must prepare the ground for his coming and prepare the grounds for the unity of Muslims. The unity of Muslims. Unite with each other, and insha'Allah, the Imam will make his reappearance. We have to become united within ourselves first and foremost. We have to make sure that I have no hasad, no hatred, no negative thoughts about my believing brothers and sisters. I have to start with myself. As the verse of the Quran says, God does not change the state of a community up until they change their own selves. My own nafs can't have any negative thoughts about the people of my community. Otherwise, guess what? My community will not change. I have to start with me. Purify my own thoughts, which make my belief, which end up being my actions. If that hasn't changed, and I hold negative, evil thoughts, nothing's going to change. The Imam's not going to come. He needs what? Some groundwork to be done. For there to be communities prepared and ready. That starts with us as an individual. While we're alive. That's it. That's our responsibility. The unification, the uniting of a community, my dear brothers and sisters. This was the reason, the actual basis upon which Imam al-Hussain left Medina. When you think about why Imam al-Hussain left Medina, what comes to your mind? Imam al-Hussain had a statement of why he was leaving Medina. He says, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَتَرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر وأسير بسيرة جدي وأبي علي بن أبي طالب عليه السلام. He says what? Imam al-Hussain is saying that I'm leaving Medina. Why am I leaving Medina? I don't want to cause sedition. I don't want to cause corruption. I'm not leaving in jest, and I'm not here to oppress anybody. The reason why I'm rising and the reason why I'm leaving is with one sole objective, and that is to rectify the community of my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I shall enjoin that which is good and forbid that which is evil, and realign and walk that path outlined by my grandfather and my father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. The aim of Imam al-Hussain was simply what? To unite. To realign and rectify those hearts that are swayed. And it's not about the numbers. We're talking about 2 billion. And yet we're in the state that we're in. Homophobia, that's being taken care of. Anti-Semitism, that's being looked after. Every other group out there, wrong or right, is having its rights fulfilled or wrongs fulfilled. The Muslim Ummah, 2 billion I said, 1 in every 4. What happens in the Middle East? There's 2 billion of us, but we're not united. You know the story, and I'm going to say the story just so that you remember. Of the father who has 10 sons, tells them all to go out and pick up a stick. I'm sure the elders have heard it a million times. Just saying it for the youth, so that this story continues in the generations. Father has 10 sons. He tells each one of them to go and pick up a stick. They bring it to him. This is while he's on his deathbed. He says, break the stick. They all break the stick easily. He tells them all to go out, get the same size stick. They all go out and bring it back to him. He says, okay, put all these sticks together. Now try to break it. They cannot. He says, and this is a lesson. The lesson is this. All my life, I've told you to sit together, eat together, do not be disunited. Why? Just like the single sticks, you will be broken. But if you're united, no force can overcome you. This is the message of Islam. Let these differences, whatever they may be, but do never become disunited. Keep your hearts clean, pure. Why? This is what the Imam of our time gives. That's why we do what we do. Imam al-Hussain was leaving for that simple goal. And he's leaving what? You know, many of us here are immigrants. I'm an immigrant. I have left my country in England. Many of us have left homes and cities. And not just homes and cities, but memories growing up in a place, friends, family alive, and those that have passed. How beautiful are those cities and those towns, home cities. How much of an attachment do we have to them? Huge. We love to go back. We love to reminisce, even if we don't get a chance to go back. Why? Because there's attachments there. Now imagine for a second. We're not talking about an ordinary city. We're talking about Madinatul Munawwara. And those of you that have been to Medina, as an ordinary human being, please tell me, for those of you that have had the honor of the ziyarah of Rasulullah, was it easy leaving that city when you had to leave? Heartbreaking. And it doesn't make a difference how many times you've been. Leaving Rasulullah is not an easy thing to do. That's as an ordinary believer. Now imagine Imam al-Hussain. My dear brothers and sisters, every single time the children of Rasulullah had to leave Medina, it was not easy. We just had a couple of days ago the shahada of Imam al-Kazim. Did Imam al-Kazim want to leave Medina where he had grown up? No. How was he taken away? He was dragged whilst in a state of salah in the masjid of his grandfather Rasulullah. Dragged. Taken away. Didn't even given an opportunity to say goodbye to his family. Gone for how long? For 14 years, never to return. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, when he's being again forced to travel to Khurasan by the ruler of that time. Do you know how many times Imam al-Rida alayhi salam got up to leave when he was saying farewell to the Holy Prophet? 3 times Imam al-Rida sits next to Rasulullah's grave, speaks to Rasulullah, gets up, wants to leave, cannot leave, comes back, sits down again, begins to talk to Rasulullah again, stands up again, walks, cannot leave, comes back again for the 3rd time. Now imagine Imam al-Hussain, born and raised in that city. That city which holds his brother Imam al-Hassan, who he's had all his lifelong memories with, holds Rasulullah. Those of you that have forefathers in a city, how beloved is that place to you? Why? Because it holds the body of your forefathers. This is not no ordinary forefather. This is Rasulullah. This is Imam al-Hussain. And now imagine a place that holds the grave of your mother. No ordinary mother. A mother who is Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha. Not an ordinary, nobody that there is to rival in this world or the hereafter. Imagine, and you know that you're not coming back to that city. When Imam al-Hussain comes for the final time to the grave of Rasulullah, they say, the narrators narrate, that Imam al-Hussain, he ran and he fell upon the grave of Rasulullah, just like a child runs towards his father and falls into his lap. Imam al-Hussain begins by reciting 2 rak'ah salah next to the grave of Rasulullah. After completing those 2 units of prayer, Imam al-Hussain raises his hands for dua. And he begins to say, Ya Allah, bear witness that I am being forced to leave the city of Rasulullah, which houses his blessed body, that of my mother and of my family members. Because, and for the sake of the unity of the Ummah of Rasulullah. Ya Rasulullah, after praying, falls and lies down on top of the grave of his grandfather Rasulullah and begins to say, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Jaddati, Ya Jaddi, oh my grandfather, I am being forced to leave you because of people who have become so tyrannical that they will not spare me or your family and shedding their blood within this holy city. Imam al-Hussain begins to cry. And they cry to such a severe extent because they're having to leave the Holy Prophet that they become unconscious. They fall into a deep sleep. In this sleep, Imam al-Hussain sees the Holy Prophet coming towards him. On the right hand side is all the Anbiya, and on the left hand side is all the Awsiya that have passed. In front of Rasulullah and surrounding all of these great personalities are Malaika. And they approach with the Holy Prophet to Imam al-Hussain. Rasulullah takes the head of Imam al-Hussain and embraces it to his chest. He then kisses Imam al-Hussain on his forehead and on his neck, and then begins to say, "Oh my beloved grandson, I see very shortly that you are rolling within your own blood in a land by the name of Karbu wa Bala. And yet, you are surrounded by those people who claim to be part of my community, yet you are dying of thirst. And none of them are coming towards your aid. Oh my beloved son, understand that through this means, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for you a station in paradise that nobody else has. But also understand, my son, it cannot be achieved except through your martyrdom. Oh my beloved son, your mother has already passed and come to us. Your father has already passed and he is with us. Your brother Imam al-Hassan is already here. We are all eagerly awaiting your arrival. Oh my beloved son, understand what it is that you must do. My dear brothers and sisters, Imam al-Hussain wakes up from his sleep. He looks at his grandfather. He says, "Oh my grandfather, please take me with you. I have no need for this world and to remain within it." My dear brothers and sisters, Imam al-Hussain returns back to his home. Final words of Masayib for you, my dear brothers and sisters. The sacrifices that have been made for you and I to be a community today is laden with the blood and the sacrifice of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. The final person the narrators narrate that Imam al-Hussain goes to see is none other than his mother, the masteress of all women of all time, none other than Az-Zahra Salamullah alayha. Imam al-Hussain was following the exact same pattern of Rasulullah. You know, when the Holy Prophet used to come to Medina, the first person he would see was who? Sayyidah Zahra Salamullah alayha. The last person he would see when leaving Medina, Sayyidah Zahra. She was the pivot by which the Holy Prophet would enter the city of Medina and exit. Imam al-Hussain, they say, the narrators narrate, when Imam al-Hussain goes for the final time to see his mother, those of you that have left mothers ever for a journey, you know that inshallah you're coming back. But imagine Imam al-Hussain who's going to see his mother for the last time. Imam al-Hussain, the narrators narrate, runs towards the grave of Zahra. And when does Imam al-Hussein go? Does he go during the day when he's able to? No, he has to go by night. Why does he have to go by night? Because the sanctity and the sacredness of that grave was not protected. Why was the body carried out by night? Why were there other graves buried at the same time? Because even after their death, their bodies and their graves were not secure. Imam al-Hussein goes by night to his mother to bid farewell. The narrators narrate, he runs towards that grave and falls upon it like a child does towards his mother, falling into her lap. Imam al-Hussein then begins to say, "Oh my beloved mother, I do not wish to leave you, but the promise that has been made, what I have been foretold by Rasulullah, your father, my grandfather, is that this religion of Islam will not be secure up until that I leave and sacrifice all that I have and that I am. And that is the reason why I leave." I would say, no doubt, the voice from the masteress of the women of all time came back. "Oh, my son, who I've raised by grinding that mill, who I've raised by staying awake at night, who I've raised with such love and affection, knowing what your grandfather has already told me what is to befall, I am not to remain in my grave." What do the narrators narrate? As this caravan leaves Medina, full of what? Warriors? No. Women and children, 6-month-old, 4-year-old daughters. As they leave and they camp on their way from Medina to Mecca, as everybody on an evening retires and goes back to their khayma, the narrators from that caravan, they narrate, the companions of Imam al-Hussein say, "Ya Imam al-Hussein, every night when we all go to sleep, we hear the voice of a young lady screaming, 'Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain.'" Imam al-Hussein says, when he's asked, "Ya Imam al-Hussein, who is this voice that we are hearing every night?" Every night when we retire, Imam al-Hussein says, "This is none other than my mother, who has been following our caravan, and she has been with us the day that we left Medina. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين." My dear brothers and sisters, let us raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while we have these precious tears within our eyes. And let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Ya Allah, purify my nafs. Allow me the ability to overcome its evil traits so that I can be one of the means by which my community changes. Ya Allah, provide for me the ability to follow your instructions in the commandments that are placed within the Holy Quran and the Seerah of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, allow our youth to be of the most noble, chastest and modest of characters. Ya Allah, allow our elders to have the nobility and dignity of age. Ya Allah, provide for us through your infinite mercy so that we can face the challenges of our times. Ya Allah, increase for us halal, rizq al-halal. Ya Allah, remove from us any type of bala which is there as a detriment, which is there to cause fitna and fasad. Ya Allah, those of us that have come with any hajats, we ask you on the namesake of Abu Abdullah Imam Hussain, under whose shrine no hajat is left unfulfilled. Ya Allah, bihaqqi Abu Abdullah, fulfill for us our sincere hajats. Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive us all the sins that we may have committed. From this day forward, Ya Allah, give us the tawfiq and strength to rectify our nafs. Ya Allah, we ask you to have maghfirah of all our marhumin and marhumat that are no longer here. Ya Allah, our final dua is the hastening of the reappearance of the one that we are eagerly awaiting, the Imam of our time. Ya Allah, before which, make us a community full of individuals ready to sacrifice everything that we have at the feet of the Imam of our time. وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآل محمد. My dear brothers and sisters, before we end today's majlis, I will request the Surah Al-Fatiha for the marhum upon whom this majlis has been established for the Isa al-Swab. The marhum is none other than Shabbar Mahdi, son of Akhtar Wasi Ali. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive any sins that were committed by the marhum, to increase his amal khair through this majalis, to give sabr al-jameel to the family members, and for him to be raised alongside Muhammad and Ali Muhammad on the day of Qiyamah. Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
اللهم صل على محمد
يا حسين 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 يا حسين
Abbas Bawafa Abbas Bawafa Abbas 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 महफूज काफिला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है महफूज काफिला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है अभी दूर करबला है अभी दूर करबला है अभी दूर करबला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है महफूज काफिला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है इस नूरी कारवां में नूरी अमरियां है नूरी अमरियों में नूरी सवारियां है नूरी सवारियां है सर पर अलम खुला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है अभी दूर करबला है अभी दूर करबला है अभी दूर करबला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है महफूज काफिला है अब्बास जो जिंदा है ना महरमों का मजमा हट हट के है गुजरता पहरे में बावफा के तय हो रहा है रास्ता तय हो रहा है रास्ता क्या शान दबदबा है अब्बास ابھی دور کربلا ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، محبوب قافلہ ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، عباس جیسا بھائی سارا کارواں ہے، بولے حسین مجھ کو پھر کوئی غم کہاں ہے، پھر کوئی غم کہاں ہے، ہر غم کی یہ دوا ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، محفوظ قافلہ ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، زینب حیا کی ملکہ کلثوم اور رقیہ، لیلا رباب پرواں کبرا سکینہ فضا، کبرا سکینہ فضا، ہر کوئی بارزہ ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، ابھی دور کربلا ہے، عباس جو زندہ ہے، عباس 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 عباس، یا حسین 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 یا حسین، محمد وآلہ
متوجہ زیارہ۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، السلام علیک یا ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیک یا ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا ابن امیر المؤمنین وابن سید الوصیین، السلام علیک یا ابن فاطمة الزہراء سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا اخ الحسن المجتبی، السلام علیک یا اخ زینب الکبریٰ، السلام علیک یا اخ الام کلثوم، السلام علی الحسین وعلی علی بن الحسین وعلی اولاد الحسین وعلی اصحاب الحسین، خصوصاً سیدی و مولائی ابو الفضل العباس ابن امیر المؤمنین ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا علی الاکبر، السلام علیک یا علی الاصغر، السلام علیک یا قاسم ابن الحسن، السلام علیکما یا اونو محمد، السلام علیک یا رقیہ بنت الحسین، السلام علیک یا سکینہ بنت الحسین، السلام علیکم یا بقیت الشہداء بکربلا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا مولائی وابن مولائی یا غریب الغرباء، السلام علیک یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام علیک یا شمس الشموس وانیس النفوس ایہا المدفون بارض توس، کن شفیعنا وشفیع والدی فی یوم الجزاء، السلام علیک یا علی بن موسیٰ الرضا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا مولانا وسیدنا یا صاحب العصر والزمان، الامان 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 من فتنة الزمان، السلام علیک یا خلیفۃ الرحمن، السلام علیک یا شریک القرآن، السلام علیک یا امامنا و امام الانس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك، واجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك وشيتك والزوارك في الدنيا والآخرة والمستشهدين بين يديك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة جميعا، ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Once again, my dear brothers and sisters, the Surah Al-Fatiha for Marhum Shabbar Mahdi. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل